We have a problem, Batman. Gotham needs you again.
Hydra is a snake that grows new heads faster than you can cut them off. They've been around since World War II, hiding inside governments and armies, turning good soldiers into Nazi fanatics who think they're saving the world. Red Skull leads them when he's not dead. Baron Zemo plots from the shadows. And thousands of agents work normal jobs while waiting for orders to destroy democracy. Their motto, cut off one head, 2 more shall take its place, isn't just words. It's how they actually operate. Kill 1 leader, 3 more step up. Destroy 1 base. 5 more are already built. The contingency protocol must account for an enemy that treats failure as fertilizer for future growth. They recruit through legitimate organizations, turning patriots into traitors and heroes into villains. Their greatest weapon isn't their technology or their operatives. It's their ability to make evil look noble, too. To convince good people that freedom is the enemy and order requires absolute control. Fighting Hydra means fighting an idea that has learned to hide inside the very institutions meant to protect against it. The Red Skull represents the ideological core that gives Hydra its direction and purpose. When he's alive, he provides the fanatical leadership that keeps scattered cells unified around a Nazi principles disguised as order and security. When he's dead, he becomes a martyr that inspires even greater devotion from true believers. The strategy for Skull requires understanding that killing him often makes the problem worse. Dead martyrs are more powerful than living leaders because they can't disappoint their followers or make tactical mistakes. The approach involves systematic discrediting of his ideology through exposure of his failures, a documentation of the chaos his leadership actually creates, and most importantly, to demonstrating that his vision of order inevitably leads to destruction. This includes psychological warfare that exposes the contradictions in his philosophy, a strategic manipulation that forces him into positions where his methods clearly fail, and careful timing of any elimination attempts to prevent martyrdom. The goal isn't just stopping Red Skull, but making his ideology toxic to potential followers. A Baron Zemo operates as the tactical mind behind Hydra's long-term strategy, planning operations that span decades and manipulating events from behind the scenes. Unlike Red Skull's fanatical leadership, Zemo represents cold calculation and patient manipulation that makes him far more dangerous because he's harder to predict and counter. His aristocratic background gives him access to resources and connections that other Hydra leaders lack, while his intelligence makes him capable of adapting to countermeasures in real time. The strategy for Zemo requires extensive surveillance to map his network of contacts and resources, a careful analysis of historical patterns to predict his long-term objectives, and development of counter-manipulation tactics that can disrupt his plans without revealing the source of interference. This includes feeding him false information that leads to strategic mistakes, or turning his allies against him through careful revelation of his true nature, and most importantly, forcing him into reactive rather than proactive positions where his planning advantage becomes useless. Crossbones and the field operatives represent Hydra's tactical enforcement arm, the muscle that turns ideology and strategy into actual violence and intimidation. These agents are typically true believers who have been convinced that their acts of terrorism serve a noble cause, to making them extremely dangerous because they're willing to die for their mission. Unlike mercenaries who can be bought or threatened, Hydra operatives fight with religious fervor that makes them nearly impossible to deter through conventional means. The strategy involves identifying and tracking field operatives through their operational patterns, developing countermeasures for their standard tactics and equipment, and most importantly, creating situations that expose the contradictions between their beliefs and reality. This includes psychological operations that demonstrate how their actions harm the people they claim to protect. A strategic manipulation that forces them to choose between following orders and maintaining their moral self-image, and when necessary, elimination protocols that remove them before they can complete their missions. Dr. Faustus and the Psychological Warfare Division represent Hydra's most insidious threat: the ability to turn heroes into villains through mind control and psychological manipulation. These operatives specialize in breaking down individual identity and rebuilding it according to Hydra's specifications, by creating sleeper agents who don't even know they've been compromised. The defense against psychological manipulation requires extensive mental conditioning for all personnel who might encounter Hydra operatives. Regular psychological evaluations that can detect subtle changes in behavior or loyalty, and most importantly, understanding that anyone can be compromised under the right circumstances. This includes development of counter-conditioning techniques that can reverse Hydra brainwashing, a creation of code words and verification systems that can identify compromised individuals, and establishment of protocols for handling personnel who may have been subjected to psychological manipulation without their knowledge. The Winter Soldier program represents Hydra's ability to create perfect weapons from captured heroes and soldiers through systematic brainwashing and physical enhancement. These operatives combine superhuman capabilities with complete loyalty and tactical expertise, making them nearly unstoppable in direct confrontation. The strategy for handling Winter Soldiers requires understanding that they're victims rather than villains, to people who have been stripped of their identity and free will through systematic psychological and physical torture. 2. The approach focuses on memory restoration rather than elimination, using psychological triggers that can break through their conditioning, providing evidence of their true identity and history, and most importantly, offering genuine alternatives to continued service to Hydra. This includes development of deprogramming techniques that can restore their original personality, creation of support systems for recovering Winter Soldiers, and establishment of legal protections that recognize them as victims rather than criminals. Infiltration Protocol addresses Hydra's greatest strategic advantage: their ability to place agents inside government agencies, military units, and superhero organizations without detection. These sleeper agents often spend years or decades building legitimate careers and gaining trust before activating, making them nearly impossible to identify through normal counterintelligence methods. And the detection strategy requires behavioral analysis that can identify subtle patterns indicating divided loyalty, a financial investigation that can trace unexplained resources or connections, and most importantly, understanding that the most trusted individuals are often the most likely to be compromised. This includes random loyalty testing that can't be anticipated or prepared for, compartmentalization of sensitive information to limit damage from inevitable breaches, and development of verification systems that can confirm identity and loyalty in real time. The approach acknowledges that perfect security is possible, but aims to make filtration so difficult and detection so likely that Hydra agents can't operate effectively. What do you think, Alfred?
Master Bruce, you're treating these people as enemies to be defeated, but many of them are victims who have been systematically brainwashed and manipulated into serving evil. The Winter Soldiers, the field operatives, even some of the leadership. They've been psychologically conditioned to believe they're serving a righteous cause. Yes, they're dangerous and must be stopped. But shouldn't our goal be helping them remember who they were before Hydra got to them? Sometimes the most strategic victory comes not from destroying enemies, but from saving the people buried beneath the conditioning. Every Hydra agent you can deprogram is one less threat and one more ally in the fight against their ideology.
Alfred's perspective changes the entire approach from elimination to rehabilitation, recognizing that many Hydra operatives are victims of systematic psychological conditioning rather than willing participants in evil. The strategy must include extensive deprogramming capabilities that can restore original personalities and memories, a support systems for recovering agents who need help rebuilding their lives, and legal frameworks that distinguish between willing participants and brainwashed victims. This requires working with psychological specialists who understand mind control techniques, developing safe houses where recovering agents can heal without fear of Hydra retaliation, and most importantly, creating incentive structures that make defection more attractive than continued service. The approach acknowledges that saving Hydra operatives not only reduces their numbers, but provides intelligence about their operations and methods. Every successful rehabilitation becomes both a tactical victory and a moral triumph that demonstrates the superiority of freedom over control. What do you think, Robin?
Bruce, you're getting lost in all the psychology and politics, but Hydra's weakness is simple. They think they're smarter than everyone else. Yeah, they've got fancy plans and secret agents, but they also make the same mistake every villain makes. They underestimate regular people. When push comes to shove, most people don't want to live under Nazi rule, even if you call it something else. So instead of trying to outthink them at their own game, why not just expose them for what they really are? Show people the truth about Hydra's history, their methods, their goals. Let the public decide whether they want to live in Red Skull's world. Sometimes the best strategy is just being honest while your enemies are lying.
Robin's directness highlights the power of simple truth against sophisticated deception. The strategy involves systematic public exposure of Hydra's true nature, history, stagnant as too, and objectives through carefully coordinated information campaigns that can't be dismissed as propaganda. This includes releasing documented evidence of their Nazi origins, testimonials from victims of their operations, and clear demonstrations of how their ideology leads to oppression and violence. The approach relies on the fundamental human preference for freedom over control, trusting that most people will reject Hydra's vision once they understand what it really means. This requires developing secure communication channels that can't be compromised or censored, building coalitions with media organizations and civic groups that can amplify the message, and most importantly, presenting the information in ways that appeal to people's values rather than their fears. The goal is creating social immunity to Hydra's recruitment by making their ideology publicly unacceptable.